And now for a little Tic Tac talk. You like that?
Tic Tac talk. Yeah, and then we talk about Tic Tac Jack.
So when we last had Mr. Turber on the show, he told us that this was U.S. technology,
which it still is,
built at Plant 42,
which it is not,
by multiple companies, because we had three different. We had Go Fast, Gimbal, and what was called Tic Tac.
Yeah, or Flare One is the name of the video.
And you told us with 100% certainty that this was U.S. technology.
Absolutely.
And it's an actual 40-foot flying object that flies without propulsion and is gravity defying and so forth, and has even been flown over to North Korea. So
exactly.
Is there anything about that you would like to amend?
Absolutely. I owe you and your viewers and anyone else that was taken aback by this an apology, but an apology with a little, catch to it. But the apology is to you, my friend. I did hoodwink you into that, and I do remember saying we might want to edit that out, but it was left in. So since it was left in, I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and run with my original idea, which was to basically run a social experiment to see exactly how these things work. And it worked perfectly, actually. But for you and for Michael, I wanted to say I apologize. Hopefully you're not mad at me. But
you're back on the show, but it might just be for me to shit on you. So
yeah,
who knows?
It could be, and you would be well within your right and reason to do that. But I just want to make certain that everybody understands why that was done. And at this point in time, I'm actually in a better position because that was done. It allowed me to see and prove certain things and aspects of how the UFO community works and how different things operate in that area. So I did the same thing inside the flat Earth community as well. So I went in there as another entity, just basically bounced around, challenged Eric debate, $100,000 debate, and all these different things. But in this one, the thing was it seems to be interesting that some in that UFO community will accept things at face value, and then argue other points, meaning this. TTSA came out with those three videos. The videos essentially came from DOD, but TTSA is who actually presented those to the public, even after they had one of them had been presented before. So you have these three videos that come out, and everyone is eating these things up, taking them at face value. The things that were explained to people in the videos were taken for their word for it. They assumed that many experts had looked at these videos. They even came out with a television show that had the experts on the show explain that certain objects were doing certain things that they actually were not doing. But if you watch the video and someone's telling you what's happening in the video, you tend to want to believe it. And the issue at this point is it's not. And I even found out that I was hoodwinked, and so was my friend, the AV specialist that we had the debriefing call from 2005. That actually happened.
Okay, well, let's go back to you being hoodwinked, because there's two elements to the things that you reported on the show. One is that you definitively know that this is U.S. technology, and that it is incredible new U.S. technology, that what they saw is actually real. It wasn't a phantom. It wasn't a spoofing technology, that it was real U.S. technology built by U.S. companies at Plant 42, and to the extent that one was even flown over North Korea. So there was that part of your story. And then there's the other part of the story, some of it that was told in the interview, some of it was, over beers later, that in addition to this object being real, you've actually flown in one. So when you talk about social experiment, which fabrication are you talking about?
Yeah, where do we draw the line? What's true and what's not, and what have you? So
let's start with, before we get to you flying in one, let's start with the assertion with 100% certainty, as you said at the time, that this is a U.S. technology built by U.S. companies at Plant 42, which turns out to, you're saying now, not be correct.
Well, the fact that the physical object that did what was claimed it was doing, all the incredible G turns and the incredible speeds being made at Plant 42, that is not the case now. I have subsequently learned quite a bit more since we've been on that show, on your show. I've done this in a couple other shows, but for the most part,
okay. But I'm going to stick with the things that you said before, because
I did not
your credibility obviously is in serious doubt right now. So before anybody would give 2 seconds thought to what you're saying now you've learned,
right?
We first have to cover, well, why did you tell us a year and a half ago that it was U.S. technology and stated pretty definitively?
Right. Obviously, it's a head scratcher. But the situation is this. During that time, when I presented that information to you, I wanted to see if someone can fool you. You're a smart man. You're an attorney. Okay. If someone could fool you, or at least give you enough doubt or enough question to add credence to it, and to be able to, I had to come up with extra things to prove to you that this really occurred. Okay. So if that happens, then that means that other people are doing that. Okay. Well, I did it on purpose, and I did it on purpose so I could find out exactly where these people go with these things, because this is obviously happening. You can't have all of the different descriptions of what's going on with Tic Tac all be true. It's just not possible. So that allowed me to have people argue against me. It made me look for the correct answers. And in my travel across the country, I was able to go to different places and actually start gathering more information and finding out what this really was. And the evidence is, and just to clarify on your show, the things that were not true, Trump did not order this thing to go fly to North Korea. There was
okay, but we're going to go through these things kind of one by one.
Okay,
so
a la carte.
Yeah. So first, what you're saying is this was an experiment by you to put some information out there, albeit false,
right,
to see how people respond to it, and to see whether by putting out false information you can somehow gain factual information.
Correct.
Is that the proper summary?
To some degree. I don't want to be a hoaxer. I don't want to be labeled as that. But what it allowed me to do, if you want to use the term social experiment, which is a cliche kind of weird term that some people use, you can use it as that. But it did yield the results I needed at the time. And to this day, it has, I've pretty much gotten a lot further away from that stigma. But it's still there, and I'll still have to deal with it. The cool thing is that at this point, it doesn't matter, because the factual information is what I was after all along. Number one is definitely U.S. Well, go ahead and go down your list. If you...
Yeah. Okay. so well, just for instance, because it's fascinating to me, and maybe to others, you know, some of the things that you came up with as part of this social experiment. So, for instance, the idea that it was flown to North Korea by Trump to show off to Kim, related to the time period when the U.S. had put Korea on the terrorist list or some type of country list. So how did you come up with that idea? I'm just trying to get into the Turber brain, as when he plans the social experiment to say these things that are not true. There's some pretty creative stuff there. So that was very creative. Is that something that you came up with while sitting there in the interview, or something that you?
Oh no. This is about maybe a week before we did the show. If you remember when we had gone out, we should have had the show back in like June or May or June or something. But remember, you got married and we delayed the show till, God, it's been a while, like November or something. But you remember the day when I did the found your doctor friend or whatever from a while back. It was around that time frame before you went to you got married and went to Italy and what have you. So
who was the doctor friend?
I'm trying to remember. We were sitting there, and I was trying to show you how fast I could find people. And one of the questions that you had was, there was a person you had not seen in years and years and years.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So so that was like a proof of being able to actually do something. So, which I hopefully you appreciated.
Yeah. So we ended up doing the interview.
Right
after I got back from my wedding, which would have been, I think you're right. Yeah, I got back in late October. So I think it was late October, early November.
Yeah, it was November 4th is when the show came out.
Yeah. Okay. But anyway, you were answering the question about when the Trump having the Tic Tac flown to show off to Kim Jong-Un idea popped into your head.
Right. That was about a week before. So I had to pick a time frame as to when I flew the Tic Tac. So I went to that time frame of around, my birthday, November 18th, 2017. It was in the middle of the Las Vegas investigation, could put a lot of time. So I was toying with which way to swing this thing. And when I did, I started looking at, okay, there has to be some world events that would have occurred at a time that would involve the intelligence community. So that's when I picked, well, these two events happened very close to each other, literally one after the other. Putin was put on notice, and then North Korea, was put back on the terrorist list, all within a day of each other. Also, during that exact same week, Trump was nowhere to be found. And there was his daily schedule, if you look it up on Wikipedia, went blank that week. So I was like, wow, all of this is just so too perfect. So
it was Thanksgiving week, I recall.
Yeah, it was around Thanksgiving week, but the previous year he had not been gone that many days. So it just kind of worked out where everything was like did quite well. And what I wanted to do was to show you spoofing technology and how it works. And so when I turned my phone over to you and you got to see me being able to prove that I flew from California to Washington, D.C., and the phone showed that I landed right at the White House for you in an hour and 24 minutes. So for me to explain that to you, to spoof my phone, to spoof to you. So I spoofed the phone, which in turn spoofed you. And we all have been spoofed by these objects. Mm-hmm. And I'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah. So the phone trick was part of the deception on the whether you flew in one. The fact that the phone showed based on Google Maps, I think it was, that at this time you were in somewhere in Inland Empire, Los Angeles, and an hour and 24 minutes later you're in Washington, D.C.
Correct.
There's no craft that could get you there that quickly.
Right. So I had to make it fast enough to allow that to occur. But not so fast that I couldn't explain the 1G acceleration. So I had to come up with the 1G acceleration where the acceleration is so slow that you wouldn't even notice it. But over a period of time, which only in 15 minutes, you're going, easily over 1,000 miles an hour. So, and that's where Jack Safari comes in. So me and him have had a lot of conversations like that. That's actually how we met up.
Yeah. So the idea, before our interview, as far as the idea of Tic Tac, the question was, are these things real? And also, I think there was probably an assumption that, well, even if they are real, there's no one flying in them because you couldn't handle the G-force. Right. So if you're going to fly it as quickly as possible from Inland Empire, Los Angeles to DC, you would only be able to travel to accelerate at what 1G? Is that what
you could accelerate faster, but at 1G you wouldn't even hardly notice it, but you would still attain the speed necessary to get me from Los Angeles to Washington, DC in an hour and 24 minutes.
Right. But so you did those kind of calculations and then setting them, and then to the setup on Google Maps, which I did learn after when I did a little test for myself, that it's very easy to go into Google Maps and just enter in times. You can edit.
You can edit times and stuff, but what you can't do is spoof it. So you have to get a spoofing software program that actually makes it look like you're there. And you're like, right now I could do it and it would look like I was somewhere walking around and everything. So it's actually an app that you put on your phone. And I think this one's called Fake GPS. And it literally makes it look like you're somewhere walking around at a mall or whatever you want to do. You can make it do all kinds of things.
It's something that I strike me a lot of husbands may want to have access to.
Yes, and at the end of the show for $19.95. So
anyway, so this is all part of.
Yeah, it was an elaborate plan to basically spoof you. Now, at the time I didn't have the intention of going beyond your show. It was just basically to show you. And then at the end, I was going to say, see how easy it was to fool you. Now imagine how this works in the bigger scale. You've got so many people out with so many different stories. Some of the stories, people may actually truly believe them. Some of them, maybe someone has been in the story so long that they now believe it themselves or what have you. So all of these different things occur. And I've seen this over and over and over again. And you've seen it too. You've talked to people that you just know that
Yeah.
No, so, but we all deal with that. And
well,
we
and I can say that to your credit, you were very good. You told
because I had enough accurate information. There's some of the stuff I told you was absolutely legit.
Well, and you're yes, I'm a lawyer, but I'm not a physicist and I'm not
Right.
a ufologist.
Right.
So, I'm a pretty, and I'm a very trusting person,
yes,
especially of you, not anymore, but at the time.
Well, I did good for Vegas for you. So,
but
yeah.
Exactly. So, I was kind of an easy target. Now, still, obviously, I was extremely skeptical, wanting to believe, wanting to think that we weren't duped. Michael Parker, our producer, was a little bit more skeptical because he's just, I think, he initially was believing the story, but he said, Jim, back when I covered UFOs regularly,
right,
I can't tell you how many people that I'd run across that would tell fantastic stories that when you hear them sound perfectly believable, but they all turn out to be false.
Right. And that's partly the entire point of this. The thing is I mixed in actual information in with my spoofing information / UFO trip to Washington, D.C., so forth. So I mixed the two together. So inside the information that I gave you was, was the technology real or was the technology U.S. technology? Yes, it's absolutely United States technology. In fact, I can tell you where the technology exists to a point. There's some things I still can't say, but there's some things I can, but by the end of this, you'll have a pretty good understanding of how all this works.
Okay. But at the time of the interview, to be clear, you were telling us these are actual 40-foot objects made by the U.S.
Yes. And at the time, I honestly believe that.
Okay. And so you're here today to tell us that turns out not to be the case.
Yeah. And that's where I got hoodwinked.
Okay.
Because
so let's stick with how you get.
Sure.
So how did you get hoodwinked?
Back in early 2005, remember I told you about the telephone call I had with a friend AV specialist who actually did set up the slides for the briefing about the technology that was utilized by that Nimitz event. At that time, I didn't really put a whole lot of thought into it because all I heard was the comms, the communications between the pilots and ATC. That's all I heard.
Specifically from the Nimitz encounter in 2004, we're talking about.
Correct. Okay. And that was specifically, everything is just specific to that event.
And this friend who was with the Navy and helped put together the slides.
No, he was at the Air Force.
Air Force. Mm-hmm. Is he still with the Air Force?
He recently has left the Air Force.
Has now left.
As of last October, November.
We're still not disclosing your friend's name?
Anyone that actually goes into this and goes around the date of when that briefing was will kind of be able to figure it out. Because there's not that many AV specialists that set up the PowerPoint presentations back at that time at that particular base, which I haven't mentioned the base yet.
Air Force specialist.
He's an AV specialist in the Air Force.
Oh, AV specialist. I thought that's why I thought you were saying Navy. AV specialist. Right. Okay, but this person is real and exists.
Yes. Yep.
Scout's Honor.
Scout's Honor, wherever the Scout's Honor is.
Were you ever in the Scouts?
I was in the Cub Scouts.
Okay, so Cub Scouts Honor.
If there's such a thing, sure.
Okay, look at the camera, Mike.
Oh,
over here.
Yes, absolutely. The person that exists in is a real person. If you actually went back to that time frame, to that,
and looking at the camera, Scout's Honor, you spoke to this person.
Looking at the camera, Scout's Honor. Scouts Honor.
Cub Scouts Honor.
I can't swear on the Bible because I'm atheist, so you're not going to take me down that.
No, that's right. I'm using the Cub Scouts.
Let's just put it this way: this is all going to come out anyway. So this part is going to prove itself true anyway. So I'm not even really
okay. So let's go back to how you were hoodwinked. So you speak to the person, you hear the comms. Keep going.
Yeah. Now he and I both thought when you're listening, if all you hear is the radio transmission is going back and forth, you believe that there's something going on, that these people that they're chasing a UFO. That's what it sounds like. And just like when you watch the Nimitz Encounters, which is the documentary by Dave Beatty, which is excellent, and everybody should see that, by the way. And it puts visual perspective on all this, so it all makes sense. When you hear that, keep in mind if you watch Dave Beatty's show and didn't watch any of the graphics, and just heard the radio transmissions. That's all we heard. But he was putting together the data, and what was also happening was the contractors were showing up. So on the second call, or the first call, they called me and says, "Hey, Mike, blah, blah, blah. What are you doing? I need to talk to you. Something's going on, blah, blah, blah." So then he calls me back about an hour later, which basically is a huge no-no to do this. But he played a snippet for me over the phone. And he says, "What do you think that was?" After about maybe 4 minutes or so. I said, "Wow, it sounds like this guy was chasing a UFO." I said, "What is this?" He says, "I don't know. It's some Navy stuff that we just got, and we're setting up the briefing slide for it or whatever." So he wasn't even far enough into it for him to know. The next day or 2 days later, I think, he calls me back and says, "Oh, I think it's definitely our stuff. I just don't know, enough about it," because he just set up the slides and then he was no longer a part of it. So just the graphics part. And that was in it. I never thought about it again until Dave Beatty's show came out, and I was able to hear the actual audio. Because if you look back at the Tic Tac video, there is no audio. You don't hear Chad Underwood, which is the person who filmed the Tic Tac, is Chad Underwood. You don't hear the communications going back and forth to the ship, so you don't get to be privy to that. So in hearing them on Dave's show, just the reenactment of them, then it clicked, and it put 2 and 2 together to figure out what that was. And so back at the time, I believed that they were utilizing U.S. technology, because it was clear it was our technology by the way he said this meeting was set up. The contractors were there. He said who was there, so I knew which contractor was there. And at the time, you could tell that these were what he thought were physical objects, and there are physical objects that were part of this. But as far as them exhibiting the characteristic flights patterns and all the speeds and all the G-forces and all that, it didn't happen.
So in what way were you hoodwinked?
Well, because at the time I believed that they were actual physical objects doing what they tell us they were doing in the videos, which not one of the videos shows anything extraordinary, but we're told that it does.
Okay, but you believed it, but who hoodwinked you?
I'm doing this face, the guys that do the where they look at you, the body language and stuff. So I'm going to try to keep doing this right here. Just have fun with who hoodwinked me. No one's technically hoodwinked me. I basically hoodwinked myself because I believed that was an actual object.
Right. So you believed it, and then came on the show and said it as a fact, though. There was 100% certainty that this is what it is, and that this for sure, and that it's built at Plant 42, and that there's 3 different types, and they're built by different U.S. manufacturers. So all of that was things that you believed at the time?
The part about the different types of Tic Tac and stuff like that was more or less me trying to decipher information that I had, little tidbits that I was getting from him while he was talking to me about which contractors are there, because there were more than one contractor there, and each contractor did not really have overlapping technologies that I thought of at the time. Let's put it this way: Lockheed, Raytheon, two different contractors. Lockheed's located at Plant 42, Raytheon's at Plant 44. They make physical craft, but they also make other things as well. So if you look at it from standpoint that one makes the at-FLIR pod, keep in mind all 3 of these videos were manufactured. The at-FLIR pods manufactured by one company. The at-FLIR pod that took all 3 videos, same company, Raytheon. All 3 videos show objects that we are told are doing something that I can prove that they're not.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
We're not letting you off yet.
I know. I'm going ahead of myself.
So I wanted to discern between things that you believed at the time of our interview versus things that you were part of the social experiment.
Okay.
So what did you believe was the case versus what little things you just sprinkled in, like, the Trump North Korea thing,
right?
The fact that they're made at Plant 42, that they're made by these 3 companies. I mean, obviously you didn't, in fact, know that. You had to make that up because now you're saying it's not true.
No, those contractors were there, and they did manufacture the items that created not what we see on the video, but what the pilot saw and what Kevin Day and what all the
right. But at the time of the interview, we were talking about a 40-foot actual Tic Tac gravity defying technology, futuristic technology that you're now saying is not what was involved in this. Correct. So that part was just kind of fabricated to make for a good story.
Well, let's put it this way. At the time, I believed that the object that I was looking at on the video was a physical object, which it was. Each of the videos shows a physical object. Okay. The objects that you see on the video are simply not what we're being told they probably are or could be or what have you. They're not, all these other things that we'll get into later.
Right. Or not what they tell us, what you told us they are.
Well, yeah.
What you told us they are.
Right. True. Very good point. Very good point. Because I believed at the time that these objects were real based on the research I was doing to try to find out what research was being done to cause these craft to be built. Who had the technology to do it. And that's when I narrowed down, because I knew Lockheed was one of them. And I knew Lockheed was working on fusion. And Lockheed in 2014 released a video that said within 5 years, we'll have a working fusion reactor that will work on an aircraft. And it will be used by the military first. And then that would be subsequently given to the public. And that video is still there. It's actually on my channel that Lockheed produced. So
at the time of the interview, you said that the reason that you were coming forward with the information, which turned out to be false information, was to help the military guys. You wanted to support these guys that had seen what they had seen, and you felt bad that they weren't being told the truth by the military, that the military was lying to them, and that you were providing this information to help them with closure.
Yeah, and that's true to this day, because at the time I did believe that the objects were physically manufactured, and we had the technology at the time to do what they do. Now the information I found out since the show that I did with you completely wipes that off the chart, and actually brings up some rather disturbing other questions. Why would our own government spoof our own military into all these different things? It's just not right. Not right. So I still feel the same way about that.
So rather than providing closure for the military guys, you actually just confused things more for them.
Well, at the time, I actually believed that the objects were real. I believed at the time.
But you didn't just say that you believed it. You said that they are for sure, and you're coming forward with this information to help them with closure, and that 100% the government is lying about it.
Right.
And 100% these are U.S. technology, which
is still true. 100%.
Yeah, but that's not split hairs.
I know.
Okay.
I got you.
So is there something you'd like to say to the military guys that you supposedly were coming on to help them with closure?
Basically that, if anything I said at the time offended anyone, and I know it did, obviously, to a degree, my goal at the time, and still is to this day, is to get accurate information and to put that out. At the time, the information that I had, that I was given and told, I believed to be factual at the time. So when I said that the craft was real, the 40-foot Tic Tac, I believed at the time that it was in fact a real physical object, which it technically kind of is, but I have to wait till the next part of the show to be able to explain why I'm saying that. But anyway, so
you believed it, but you also presented it as fact. When you didn't know it as a fact, you believed it. So that was the deception. Well,
there's something I was shown that made me believe it was fact. So that's where the other part of the hoodwinking comes in. Information was given to me that was purported to be factual. It looked factual. It looked real, just like a lot of the other things out there. And
what was that? Believed it. What was that?
It was basically a document that had pictures that talked about different things that were being manufactured at Plant 42. That's why I kept going to Plant 42. I kept wanting to catch an image of this flying out of building 600, 601, or whichever the main factory building is. That's what I wanted to do. But an individual that I won't say which company he works for, but was feeding me that. And it's hard to say because we're going to get it. We're going to get into that spoofing area really fast if we stay on this path.
Okay.
Because there are physical objects that are being made.
But if this person intentionally deceived you?
I don't think they did. I think he was so compartmentalized and he was so believing in what he thought the object was going to do as well, that he thought it was doing something different. So when I kept pressing him for his status as to what he did there, that's when he came clean and told me what they actually are. And this goes from Plant 42, Plant 44, McKinney, Texas. It goes all over the map as far as how this works. Now,
okay. Let me cover two last things about what you had to say then, and then we'll get to what you have to say now. You talked specifically about Teresa, and there being 16 people that were going to disseminate this information about what the Tic Tac actually is.
Right.
And you're one of the people that was to come forward, and then you expected the others to also come forward, and they ultimately did not. One person in particular, you kind of said was supposed to come forward with this information and did not. So
did I tell you this on the show? Because I don't remember. Did I mention Teresa on the show?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Teresa's a real person. And there's a group of people that are from an area that I worked in, and all of us kind of like chit chat and goof around with each other. We have a little email thing we do back and forth, kind of like the one that you see. But
Fadi's email chain.
Yeah, that one. It's kind of like that, but we're, it's all, us just bullshitting back and forth with each other. And
hold on. We got a wild dog back there. Hold on one second. No
problem. Go ahead.
Take one break. Okay, Teresa and the email thread.
That is so irrelevant to everything that it's really not even important. That is
but it was a good part of your story, and I'm trying to discern between parts of the story where
the emphasis,
your belief,
on the Teresa thing, and that she used to be the coordinator for the organization I used to work with that would get everybody where they needed to go. I may have mentioned this to you. That was her job. It was basically like dispatch / coordinator / whatever. And so all of us would rally around her whenever she would, announce that we had a job to do or what have you. So, we'd have a four-man group go or 6-man or whatever. And she was the person that put all that together. So that's all that is. So.
Gotcha. So you kind of morphed that into the story, and this is part of the fabricated social experiment part of the story.
Well, they are real people, but I just fabricated that part into the story. Yes, correct.
Yeah. And then what about you also gave some background and history as to how this thing was developed, emanating from Star Wars and coming from universities. Dundee University was
Jack got a kick out of that one.
That was all just kind of woven and fabricated into.
That was all to give us the anti-gravity. Because if you go look for anti-gravity and you look at something that's fairly silly but somewhat was the most workable part, was you had Kidd. I think his last name was Kidd, and he had come up with a way of reducing the inertia or the mass of an object. You're not reducing the mass, but just basically the weight of an object. And he was able to apparently do it by like 0.2% or something like that. But no one has ever been able to actually duplicate it. But some other experiments that they did in Dundee University, I wanted to have it outside the United States. That way it'd be harder to check on or what have you. But I think it's Sandy Kidd is his name. I believe that's his name. But no, that's all. You keep in mind that all of the research done to lead towards where eventually we'll have anti-gravity, which effectively we can probably do within a reasonable amount of time, is based on all of the research done by all the people before. Just like no one's going to get anywhere without Da Vinci or without Edison, without Tesla, all of the things they've done to get us to the point we're at. So you have to look back, and he's
another cool little fact that you kind of sprinkled in was that the Tic Tacs were actually transported via large trucks.
Yep.
From Plant 42 to Vandenberg.
Yeah.
that was also just a fabrication to embellish the story a bit, and make it seem more believable.
Yes, but they're still transported by truck, but they're not transported in the manner that I basically discussed there. So yeah, all of that was all part of a big. So if you take the anything that had to do with a physical Tic Tac, a physical object, that part of the story, complete fabrication.
Okay.
Or based on information that was told to me by another person. But either way, I'll just take it all myself. That it's just totally hogwash.
Okay. Now, so I'll leave it up to the listeners and viewers as to whether or not they would like to continue watching, because now we're going to go into what Turber has to say now,
right, after
he's admitted that all the stuff that he said before was hogwash. So
yeah, well, not all
someone's going to have to make their own determination whether or not anything is to be believed going forward.
And I agree wholeheartedly. And for me, at this point, with what I've basically found out, is that the information that I had at the time that I did your show was still positive, but meaning it's U.S. technology. We're not dealing with China. We're not dealing with Russia. There's reasons and there's proofs that anyone could see and go, yeah, that makes sense. Remember, my story took all of this to put it together. So the parts of the story that are factual are still factual. And also an explanation of things I found out subsequently, like the people that ended up showing up at the Nimitz event. There was 4, not 2. It's 4 people that showed up, not 2. That took the data bricks and all that stuff that PJ was so mad at me about.
Okay, well, let's start talking about the new information for those who are still tuned in. Sure. I want to start with the video that you just released on 5x5 News on YouTube, where you talk about the is it the Go Fast event?
Go Fast.
Okay, yep. It's the Go Fast event on the East Coast from what year?
The end of 2014, beginning of 2015, the Roosevelt.
Okay. And you lay out, and as you point out in the video, a guy even before you, Mick West is his name, right?
Yep. Yeah. Mick West has done.
Mick West, who's kind of a famous debunker, right?
Correct.
He debunked that video and essentially said that just based on the information on the screen, and you point out the same thing in your video, that if you do the calculations, it's not true that the object was flying close to the water. It was flying at about 13,000 feet. And it's not true that it was going close to the speed of sound. It actually was going only 40 miles an hour, which just happens to be the speed of approximately the wind. And the size of it was more like a meter and not 40 meters and or 40 feet. And most likely, therefore, it's simply a balloon. And that is now your belief, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And there's the extra information to go along with that. Obviously, everything you said is true. The problem that I have with it is that if the information in the video itself is enough information to debunk the video, then how in the world did an organization like TTSA, To the Stars Academy, have these experts come on board and all this and still repeat the same story, even after they were told that of the 3 videos, this one is 100% debunked on face value? How did it slip through their cracks? Who are these experts that they hired that could not figure this out? And then it was argued with myself, with as you're aware of because you saw the emails, with Eric Bates. I almost said Eric Bates. With Eric Davis, that Mike Turber's Kruger-Dunning whatever issue that he claims I have, and Turber can't do math, and Turber's this, and he all these different things. And I'm thinking, okay, well, you don't need.
But by the Kruger-Dunning, I had to look that up. By the way, you knew what that was. Kruger-Dunning, it's called, right?
Yeah.
Apparently, it's people that are too dumb to realize how dumb they are.
Yeah, it's people that are too dumb to realize how dumb they are, or people that are really stupid and believe or exaggerate on their abilities that they can do things that they actually can't, which I find amusing because you've seen all the stuff that I do. I prove it to you, except for the Tic Tac thing.
So. Yeah. Now, but let me make sure, because there's 3 different videos or 3 different incidents. Right. Nimitz.
Yep.
And then Roosevelt.
Well, two incidents, Nimitz and Roosevelt.
Okay.
There's 3 videos. The FLIR 1 video, which is the title of the video, is the Tic Tac video from the Nimitz, which is actually filmed by Chad Underwood, not Fravor, which a lot of people think, but Fravor's the one that chased the Tic Tac, but he didn't have any ability to film it. The other two videos, you have Go Fast and you have Gimbal. Those two videos were filmed in 2014, 2015, two different times.
And which is the video where you hear the pilots going, "Holy shit! Can you believe what we just saw?"
That's Go Fast.
Go Fast. Okay.
And they actually take that audio and they play it, not to TSA, but some people have taken that, and because the audio is so salacious on that one video, that they put it on top of the other videos to make it sound like those videos are more exciting than they actually are.
Mm-hmm. But if that that audio is from the Go Fast,
mm-hmm.
The video of the Go Fast, which you're saying actually is simply a weather balloon, what's the explanation for why these pilots were yelling and screaming?
If you keep in mind, you're only seeing, I think it's a minute and 37 seconds or a minute and 17 seconds of video. So you're not seeing what happened before that. You're not seeing what happened after that. So without being privy to that, and I'm not going to say that I have privy to that, but we'll just stick with just the video itself. So you hear him say, "Whoa, got him. Did you box a moving target?" No, I got him with, whatever. So what he's done is they feel that target's moving, and the target was so small, they thought it was just far away. But the target's relatively small. It's going to be hard to box. So he boxed a moving target, but they were the ones effectively doing more of the moving. So if I took this camera here and started rotating it around my finger, this back object, everything would look like it's moving really fast. And that's all you're doing. You're having a slow moving object move through space, and you're having an object that's moving at I think it was 250 knots is what the plane was moving at, moving a different direction. And through parallax effect, you're essentially seeing what appears to be an object close to the surface of the water and moving fast. In fact, TTSA's guys, the experts, had a term for how fast the object was going. And I believe they used the term hauling ass, which directly translates into a scientific term for hauling ass is 2/3 the speed of sound. So you have like you have ludicrous speed, and now we have hauling ass is 2/3 the speed of sound. So we can now put that in the books. But that was where they left it. They had these two experts come on the show, on the Unidentified show. Both of them around 20, 25 years of experience. One a commercial pilot, the other a military pilot. And one says it's hauling ass. The other says it's 2/3 the speed of sound. And they're saying that it's close to the surface of the water. The problem is that especially the military pilot, if he ever used at-FLIR, and I keep in mind, at-FLIR is not used on all planes. It's only used pretty much on the F-18. So if he didn't fly F-18s, he wouldn't know, what some of that data would be on the screen, but he could probably figure it out. If we know the distance that an object, like this is a camera, if we know the distance the object is and the angle that the object is from that source, then we could basically figure out, by figuring out the angle and the triangle, measure the sides. Now you know how far away it is, and you know the altitude it is above the surface of the water. So that's why I did the video that you saw. I didn't use any calculator. I didn't use anything at all. And you're able to determine this altitude of the object just by a few pieces of information. If you know the plane's at 25,000 feet, the object's at 4.4 nautical miles when it was first boxed. That's 26,735 feet. And you go down that angle, which you can show graphics, whatever. That's 11,720 feet below the flying craft. If the F-18 is 25,000 feet, that means the craft is at 13,000 feet. That's nowhere near low and close to the surface of the ocean.
So if this thing turns out to simply be a weather balloon, what would be the explanation for why the pilots didn't understand? I mean, these guys aren't idiots. I mean, they fly by stuff. That's, I'm sure they've flown by weather balloons probably before. But
sure.
I mean, how could you explain the pilots being tricked? Yeah.
What did the pilots say that it was? Do you remember?
They just I don't recall. It's just
because they never did.
They expressed shock and surprise and like, whoa, holy shit kind of response. So
right. And that's two guys flying along. They see something moving over the water that they feel, and they box it, and they were excited to box it. but they never say, "Whoa, we just boxed a UFO. Whoa, we need to get permission to go chase this thing."
Well, they clearly thought it was a UFO because they were acting so surprised. If they wouldn't say, "Oh my God, look at that weather balloon."
Yeah, well,
so they clearly didn't think it was a weather balloon.
Yeah, it was a moving target.
I got to think these guys have enough experience and understanding that an object that's not moving will appear to be moving if you fly by it.
Now you're interjecting thought into this video. The video does nothing that you say.
I'm just injecting thought into the pilot's head. I'm trying to explain why would the pilots have reacted as they did if this thing was simply a weather balloon.
Who knows? But the thing is that these pilots, whenever they come forward, they would first off, they're going to know that the information supplied to them on the atmosphere. They didn't say, "Hey, we boxed a moving target hauling ass near the ocean surface." That information was given to us by TTSA. The Department of Defense never said that. They never made that claim.
No, but the Department of Defense has said that we don't know what these things were, that they did experience some UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon.
Right. And if they never went down and checked out that object that was moving slow, even if it was at 2/3 the speed of sound, they still could keep up with it, and they never did.
So for all of these smart people that have looked at that video at TTSA, Department of Defense, interested parties, are we saying that Mick West and Mike Turber are the two people that have figured this out and no one else has?
Yeah, and I even offered $10,000 to anybody that could prove it wrong. And people came on the show, and no one to this date has been able to do that. Even
okay,
Eric,
so
go ahead.
So that's that one. Now let's talk about
hang on. Let's finish with Go Fast real quick. I want to be real clear on Go Fast. Okay, the reason why Go Fast is so important of the 3 videos is because it debunks itself. The problem is if you have an organization who has pushed these videos out there and told you what's in the video, they didn't just put it out there and say, "Okay, you take a look at it and let's all come together and see what we think this is." No, they put it out there and said that this object is doing these things. It's not. That's the problem. You don't have to use trigonometry or anything to figure out what this did. The amazing thing is that this one video of the 3, this one video is clearly not what it's purported to be. The bigger question is when that information was given to the Stars Academy, that they did not retract it in the scientific community. And we were promised that TTSA would look at these things from a scientific perspective. So if you're going to do that and someone says, "Hey, no, it's not doing that," or "It's not at the altitude you said," which also means if it's not at the altitude, it's certainly not doing the same speed, and then come to find out it's doing the same speed as the prevailing wind, then there's a problem. But what happens if let's say you tell me something, Jim, and you do this experiment, whatever, and you say, "Hey, this is doing this and this and this," and then I prove to you that it's not doing what you said it does. What do you do?
Yeah. Well, just to interject, I'm not going to say that you have proven that that's not that it's not that. You've presented an analysis and a theory that actually Mick West originally posited based on his YouTube video about a year ago. And it has yet to have been countered is really what you're saying. I haven't done any digging to see, has TTSA or any other experts responded, for instance, to what Mick West put up a year ago in saying that actually, Mick West, you're wrong, and here's in what way you're wrong.
No. Okay. There's nothing out there that they said what they've done is they've attacked the individual, they've attacked me, they've attacked Mick, they've basically stated that our experts, it's like our kung fu is better than your kung fu, so to speak. But the problem is that they can't show it. If you're going to present something, and I'm always asked to present the data with it, so the data is in the video. This isn't something that I have to go calculate and figure out or whatever. Yeah. It's right
and I
there.
Encourage people to watch both your video and Mick West's video to see the calculation, because it is, as you point out, a very straightforward calculation. Right. But that, okay, we can go back to that one if you want, but I want to move on to the two others because it is relevant. If you're saying that one has been discredited, then what do we have to discredit the other two?
The other two on Gimbal, which is about the same time frame as Go Fast, that one has been, in my opinion, the best debunking of that has been done by Mick West. So it would be much better for someone to go look at Mick West's work and to see what he's done on that, because he not only shows what the object is most likely doing, he proves it. He essentially duplicates what you see on the screen using normal items that you would find around his home.
Yeah, is that the one? Because I watched his videos. His videos are very short, very easy watches. So I also encourage those. Is that the one where he said it was actually a plane, or is that the one where you're saying it's a glare?
Right. He said, see, Mix shows that it's glare, and that the lens system inside the FLIR pod, once it hits 0 degrees, it rotates. It can't, it's like you've seen cameras, PTZ cameras, what have you. When they get to a certain point, they can't go any further. So they have to change angle and go a different direction. So as you see that happening, the internal lens turns. This is so easily seen when you're debunking this. A person that's used to looking at video would look at it and immediately know that that's a lens turning, because you can see it. You can literally see it.
It's a lens turning, but what exactly are we looking at? We're looking at glare on the lens. Glare from what?
Glare from the object. Whenever you're looking at an object that's it has a heat plume or has whatever you're looking at inside the lens system, there's going to be glare inside the lens. It's called aberratic, an aberration, which is ghost. It's a term for ghost. If you have chromatic aberration, which you've seen on your own pictures, when you take a picture of anything that has sunlight coming in, or anything that is bright, or anything that's different than the object behind it, there's going to be artifacts that come off of that object that are not straight. If you aim a camera at a light, you see the rays coming out. You don't see them with your eyes, but the camera does, and the reason is because of the optics inside the camera's lens. So that
provided an explanation, because in that gimbal video you see the thing rotating a bit, right?
Yeah, and it does. If without knowing the other information, or without being able to analyze it, it does look like it's doing some crazy stuff. That object's doing 120 miles an hour.
So, but let me just ask this. So let's say that he has debunked the idea that this, whatever it is rotating, but has he also therefore proven that it was not a UAP flying at, incredible speeds, et cetera?
Well, that object wasn't. None of the objects were traveling at any great speed. So that's the cool thing, is that somehow the way that it's genius is how they did it. The way these 3 videos have been presented to us, and over time, we have formed in our heads our vision of what they're actually doing. When in fact, if you just watch the video and don't have anyone explain anything to you, they do nothing extraordinary. Not one of them does anything extraordinary. And then when you start to know the mechanics behind it and the analytics behind it and everything else that goes along with looking at an object and going frame by frame and figuring out, okay, now I know what's going on. And then you're able to duplicate it. That's where Mick West excels at that, because he was able to duplicate what you see in gimbal.
Okay, well, let's go to Nimitz.
Okay.
As far as that video, the Chad Underwood video, which purports, what are the TTSA guys saying that video shows?
They're saying that the object at the end of the video, you see what appears, and I hope you play these videos maybe in the background, maybe a graphic or something. You will see the object appear to move or jet off to the left at an incredible accelerated speed. But
so hold on a second. How fast is it supposedly going before it jets off the screen?
They don't ever really say how fast it's going at that. Basically, they were keeping up with it because it wasn't getting larger or smaller or whatever. It's whatever it is. It was moving to the left to begin with.
Right. And then again, there's a short Mick West video on this that
and I concur.
At the end, it jets off the screen.
Yeah.
And he's really saying that was the, didn't you say it was the camera adjusting or something?
Well, it's 2 things. One, as the object appears to be jetting off the screen, you'll see the zoom on the magnification change from 2 to 1, back, forth, or what have you. So when you zoom the object, it obviously looks like it moves off screen. So as the FLIR lost lock on the object, because if you look at the range, it says 99.9. That means the object is beyond the range of the FLIR's ability to range it anyway. So the object was a long way away. The range of the FLIR is 18.5 to 22 miles. So the object was past that distance. It was at probably one of the most extreme magnifications to even get to that level to see it. The object if you compare it to another at FLIR or another FLIR video that I have on my channel, looks exactly like an F-18 banking to the left. And I have that video on my channel. I have video of a forward-looking infrared of an F-18 banking to the left, and it looks almost identical to the FLIR 1 video that Chad Underwood took. And my question is this: if Chad took off with a wingman, why wasn't his wingman ever mentioned in the report beyond them going off together? And where was his wingman? What other objects were occupying that section of the sky at the same time?
So you would posit that what we see in the video is actually another F-18.
It's probably another F-18, and it very well could be Chad Underwood's wingman. I don't know for sure.
And what about in gimbal? Do we have a theory as to what?
It's probably an F-18 as well. Because when you look at it, if you transpose the rear end of an F-18 or a video of an F-18 going off that direction, traveling to the left, banking to the left on the FLIR 1 video, and doing a not even a turn. I mean, the funny thing about gimbal is the object's really not even turning. It's literally just the lens system inside the at-FLIR turning. The reason why it's the lens turning is because the clouds, the shading of the clouds, like a dirty lens, is moving with that. So the whole scene moves.
Okay, so is that the end? It turns out that these things were misinterpreted.
No, that's not the end.
Okay.
This might be a two-part show, because if you get into what they actually were and what I'm finding out, let's look at it this way. Mercury Systems. Mercury Systems is a company that makes DRFMs, which is a device that actually mimics anything that they want it to. And so if a plane's flying along, has a transponder, or is emitting any type of electromagnetic waves or whatever, that device is able to mimic it and then continue on with its transmission. So it could make it look like there's one of them or 100 of them. Okay. And it also does the Doppler effect so that it can show the object moving and moving at great speeds. This is what the technology was being proven in 2014 and 2015. They got the contract, I believe, in 2015, Mercury Systems. So if you write after the show, look up Mercury Systems spoofing technology and look who bought it. It was the Navy. Navy bought it. So in the 2004 incident, what you're looking at is spoofing technology back then, partially by Raytheon. And to get the entire exercise to work properly and for everyone to analyze the data, and the reason why the bricks were taken was so that no one would know that they were spoofed. The four guys that went on the ship, two plainclothes guys, you had two guys in flight suits. The two plainclothes guys, they were from Raytheon. That I was able to find out. That's what I was told. Whether or not it's true, I don't know. But what I was told was the two guys that were in plainclothes were from Raytheon, and I believe PJ may know that by now. I don't know, but that's the data bricks went back to the manufacturer, and then the data from that was either recorded or whatever. But anyway, it got back to a certain air base that the U.S. Air Force Research Laboratory is residing at.
So you're saying back in the Nimitz incident, that was Raytheon technology. But for the other one, it's Mercury Systems technology.
Mercury Systems was the technology that was being tested at the time that the Roosevelt was out. And keep in mind, both carrier groups just had upgrades to their radar systems. Both were in training scenarios. They were in their workups to go out for cruise, and the perfect situation. Whenever Fravor was going out or the other pilots were going out, they were specifically asked for what is their loadout. Now, what that means is they're asking, do you have any weapons on board? It's my opinion that they were being asked if they had weapons on board, not because they needed those weapons to shoot down the objects possibly that they were about to encounter. They wanted to make absolutely certain that they did not shoot down those objects, because the objects were ours anyway. Keep in mind when the pilots came back and everything was reported to upper command.
Hold on, when you say the objects were ours, but you're saying they're spoofing, so aren't you saying that they actually don't exist?
No, you have to put a physical object in the air in some of these cases to have this look like. Imagine a string of lights, okay, and the lights are all off. If you wanted to give the appearance that the lights were moving, You blink this one on, this one on, this one on, this one on, and so forth. So it appears that the lights are moving. That's effectively how some of the spoofing technology works, is you actually have a physical object that actually has something on board which transmits the signal to make it look like it's moving. You also have
what kind of physical object are we talking about?
Looks amazingly like they look just like a balloon.
So and you would just need one balloon.
No, you could use several, which would create a much larger effect, or the DRFMs would be able to transmit those signals to make it appear that objects are moving through space and time. This is not what I'm saying now is not even classified. This is information that you can look up right now. It's right there. Just look up Mercury Systems, Navy buys spoofing technology, and look at the time frame.
And how does it work? So let's say you have multiple balloons.
Mm-hmm.
How could you make it appear to a pilot who's out there flying that it's moved from balloon A to balloon B?
Well, keep in mind, each of the pilots, whenever they saw something, it was one object. Then when they say that they saw fleets of them, it's look at the ASA.
But so they saw one object moving. So how does the spoofing technology make it appear that it's moving?
It doesn't. And that's where this gets into a realm that what I'm about to tell you is going to be scrutinized greatly, and I'm probably going to be laughed at because of it. But this is the best information that I have to date. Based on what I have, whenever Fravor went out and when Kurth went out before, they both saw a bubbling of whatever in the water. Okay, about the size of a small jetliner or what have you, but obviously about the same size of a submarine. So they see this bubbling effect in the water. Well, Kurth sees that, but not the Tic Tac. Kurth comes on back to the ship. Fravor continues on with his wingman or wingwoman, if you want to call her that. And so you have 4 individuals that go out, and as they look down, they see the Tic Tac. So how can you visually see this object? Remember, it's darting back and forth across the water, but always in a north-south angle. In other words, the object, say if this was, I wish I had a fake Tic Tac here. So if this was your Tic Tac, it always stayed at the same angle of attack, so to speak. In other words, it didn't turn and then go this way and then turn and go this way and so forth. It just stayed like this and went back and forth. Amazingly enough, when you launch a spoofing balloon from a submarine and it goes up and it's still on a tether and it inflates and it's getting ready to go, it's on the tether. And if you have ever held an object underwater or above the water with a string attached to it, and any movement happens, it's going to look like that thing's doing all of this, just like a bobber that you have when you're fishing. So you have this thing in the sky that's being tethered still to a submarine, and then the final release. So as Fravor's, and this is just me piecing this together, so none of this is the best case scenario of how to explain what these guys are seeing, okay? The spoofing actually is the legit. What's happening now is just me explaining it. Fravor flies down, sees this object moving back and forth. As Fravor's flying down, the balloon is released. So the balloon starts to come up, and it's caught up in the wind, whatever, and he's coming down and he's following it. In his mind, he thinks it's a lot further away than it actually is. It's a lot closer to him. So as he goes, remember during the story, he says he cut the circle in half, and as he cut the circle, the object greatly accelerated and went past his wing and then just flew off and was over the horizon within 2 seconds. Well, according to what I was told, was that Fravor actually got so close to this balloon that the balloon actually exploded or popped and then went straight down to the water. As he turns around to look, they're thinking that the thing continued on that path, but it actually was not moving hardly at all. All of the motion, just like Go Fast, was him. As he cuts that circle in half and he flies towards it, he's a lot closer to it than he thought he was. And that object pops, goes to the water. He looks back, thinks he sees it going over the horizon. The object shows up at the cap point, and I think it was within 30 seconds or so, actually probably faster than that. That it shows up at the cap point. How would that object know where the cap point is? The cap point, just so everybody knows, is a area in space, not space like space, but area that the planes would rally around. That would be like a rally point, for lack of a better term. But for that object to show up directly at the cap point, and we're not talking about near it, we're talking about on it, same altitude, same everything, they would have to know where that was. Well, obviously the Air Force knew where it was, so they spoofed an object being at that point. The other thing too, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to distinguish between the actual balloon and a spoofed balloon. So
Right.
you're saying
Well,
there's essentially both?
Yeah, well, the balloon, that whatever was being launched from the submarine, you can say it was a spoofing balloon, or it was going to be whatever. I don't want to say weather balloon, because they're not launching weather balloons from submarines just for the fun of it. So whatever balloon was being launched was to aid in the spoofing technology test that was being done at the time.
Right.
The whole area was cleared out anyway. The Air Force was already there testing other things. Of course, you have a hypersonic missile that was tested 2 days after this in the same area. So that area was being cleared out. So there was reason for the Air Force to be in that area. That's the Mach 10.5 X-47, I think it is X-43 or X-47.
So do you understand how the spoofing technology works? How using a balloon are they able to somehow?
And they're not using the balloon. The balloon is carrying aloft the DRFM, which is the transmitter that transmits the signal that is mimicked. They can mimic whatever they want it to make it appear to be. They can make it look like it's one plane. They can make it look like it's 100 planes. They can make it look like it's a huge plane. And they
when
can
you say
have
make
any
it look
speed
like, are we talking about simply to fool a radar system or actually the human eye?
Well, both. But the actual system itself is made to spoof the radar systems. Keep in mind, each object that you saw on those 3 videos, Flare 1, which is the Tic Tac, if it is what we're saying it is, it's just an F-18 at a distance. Gimbal is just a balloon, which may be one of those spoofing balloons that happened to be in that area because they were testing it there as well. And the same thing with Gimbal, rather. Gimbal would have been just another plane, and all you're seeing is artifacts. So someone looking at these videos cherry-picked these videos because of either the audio made it look salacious or just the information in the video made the video look good. They screwed up when they brought on Go Fast. That's where they made the mistake. That's the Achilles heel on this whole thing, is Go Fast.
So what would you see, going back to the spoofing technology, and what was never been clear to me is Fravor talks about seeing this thing go from here to there. When he talks about seeing it, was he talking about with his own eyes, or is he talking about on his radar screen?
No, he's talking about with his own eyes. When he looked, according to his, what I remember of what he said, I'm trying to be very clear here, because I really don't want to offend any of these guys, and there's almost no way around it, I guess, at this point. As he's looking down, he sees it with his own eyes, and he knows how far an object, how big an object is based on the distance he is from it. So when he estimated the object was 40 feet, I'm being told the object was half that size, but if he saw it, then what he probably saw, according to the information that I have, as he was coming down, was the Tic Tac still untethered. After the canister had released it from the submarine, it comes to the surface, it pops open, the balloon starts to inflate, and it goes up, and it holds untethered until everything's ready to go, and then it releases. That's the way it was explained to me. If the submarine's underwater and skies were clear, beautiful day, the oceans were fairly calm, but maybe there's enough motion to allow the tether or whatever to move around to make it appear that this thing is bobbing up and down. So an object bobbing up and down at a distance can also look like it's doing whatever. But the key thing he said that made it very clear as to what it was that the object kept its orientation at a north-south orientation. The prevailing winds for that day were exactly that. So if you're tethering a balloon that has the shape of a Tic Tac, it is going to maneuver itself just like a windsock, the direction that the wind is traveling.
So would you say that Fravor was spoofed, or Fravor did not understand what he was seeing?
I honestly, I can't stand doing it, but many pilots before Fravor have made a mistake looking at an object, thinking of something else. Now, here's the problem. You got 4 people that saw this, not just Fravor. So you got 3 people, 2 other people that are still on station at 20 some odd thousand feet watching this. And then you have Fravor and his Wizzo going down to investigate the object. Now, Fravor and the Wizzo information they don't match up exactly. But that's another story altogether. But as he's coming down, as he cuts that circle in half, he thinks it's this far away. It's really this far away, and it's actually him coming towards it that gives the appearance of an acceleration towards him, and he just flies right by it, and the object hits the water, and he thinks it went over the horizon, and that's what it seems like. That's what most likely happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate doing that because I know I'm going to be ridiculed like crazy when this thing comes out. And I get it and I understand it. But so many great pilots before him have also made similar mistakes.
Well, but you're saying that he made a mistake, but this was also spoofing technology. So I guess I'm a little confused.
Well, it just happened to be that whatever the object was, whether it was a balloon for weather balloon or whether it was a spoofing balloon, that particular object, as it came out of the water, was they have several variations. Now they have them where the drones come out from the same type canister.
Well, look, the whole thing started with the guys on the Princeton, I believe, seeing all kinds of crazy objects on radar.
Correct.
So that's what sent people out to begin with. So,
and how fast are the objects going?
I don't recall.
About 100 knots, 120 or so miles an hour. Okay. So the objects were doing that at 28,000, 80,000 feet, somewhere in that range is what Kevin Day was stating. The prevailing winds for those dates at those altitudes were the speeds that these objects were moving. So the objects were moving at the same speed as the prevailing wind at that altitude.
But I thought it appeared to them on radar that they were darting around. No,
not on radar. Well, not on radar. They were just tracking. He said they were tracking south.
Who reported that they were darting around then?
Fravor. Fravor's
only Fravor.
Well, only Fravor at that moment. But when Kevin Day was saying, and I've talked with Kevin or chatted with Kevin, and I still got a lot more to talk to him about, and maybe we'll converse some more. But the objects, as they dropped from 80,000 feet or above 80,000 feet into the phased radar viewing area and down to the surface of the ocean, around 50 feet or so from the surface of the ocean in 0.78 seconds, which is what he remembers it to be because he remembered doing the plots the next day. That would mean the object was moving at 24 or 104,000 miles an hour, depending on which altitude it dropped from. So the appearance of that is this. This is how the spoofing works. If this is your spoofing balloon, okay, and this is another spoofing balloon over here, this will send a signal, and then this one will send a signal, and the next one will send a signal, and it looks like that object is just zooming through space. And that's the thing. I would love to be able to see the data directly from the event. And that's what we need to clear this all up 100%, because we're never going to have the complete answer until we get that. Mm-hmm. And apparently we're not going to get it, but.
All righty. Well, I think that's enough for now. But one wrap-up question would be the old friend from the briefing from 2005. Mm-hmm. If we were talking to him today and he was speaking freely, what would he say was reported at this briefing?
Well, at the time, it's just like with me. At the time, we both thought that what was being reported at the briefing was physical objects doing what we all thought they were doing, the claimed speeds and all this other stuff. That's what he thought, because he didn't sit in on the meeting and find out. But when he said who was there, that kind of gave a clue as to what we're looking at.
So you're saying he thought that they were actual 40-foot U.S. technology objects,
right? And
what about today?
No, he knows they're spoofing. And
how has he learned that?
Well, I mean, he
just through things that he's read. And
well, let me get rid of a big misnomer that everybody thinks. People think that if you have you have to have a top secret security clearance to get data out of somebody, or you have to have this or whatever. And that should be true. But you know as well as I do that but play it out the right way, you can get information from people and not necessarily throw them under the bus, or they don't have to be in a skiff or anything like that to get classified information. It's not that hard. It's not like I'm going in trying to be a spy or to whatever to get things out of it. You can just sit in a bar and just be talking to somebody, and they'll give you enough information to where you can piece together pretty good, puzzle piece here. So that's part of how some of this works. It's basically being able to get in somewhere to do that. But the key thing is this: an organization was put together, To the Stars Academy, based on these 3 videos that have been fed to us for 3.5 years. Over that 3.5 years, it's been clearly proven that at least one of the 3 is not what it is. Now that could be up for argument, but as far as I'm concerned, as far as many of the others, because the information is inside the video, you can't remove the information from the video. It's already there. So if that is being told to us and it's factually incorrect, and then what else is being said? And the same thing can be said about me, because I gave you a bunch of hogwash back on that show, and I ran with it to see where it would take me. And I was able to find out where it would take me, which I'm kind of glad I did, because it did give me some other information. I'm going to make follow-up videos to this that will explain better and with graphics, because it's hard to do a lot of this without showing people things, exactly what it is that I'm talking about.
Last question. Do we know, has the U.S. used this spoofing technology in real world situations against the enemy?
Yes. We used it during the Cuban Missile Crisis. We used it back then. That's how old this technology is. Basically, a submarine pulled up towards Cuba, launched a bunch of balloons, and which forced them to turn on all their radars, because they thought that they were being attacked, and all these balloons go into the air.
But I mean, if the technology is that simplistic and old, why would Kevin Day and the others on Princeton been confused by it?
Well, the basic technology is that old, but obviously today we would know if somebody popped a whole bunch of balloons into the air, we would recognize immediately what they are. But Aquadillo would tell you something different. That's a whole nother that Puerto Rico video. But case in point, you've got a situation where the technology is there. It's old. You can look it up right now. It's already there. Mercury Systems is who currently supplies the Navy with it. Air Force is supplied with it, I believe, from Raytheon. And Lockheed Martin's involved too. So when you start looking at these players, your mind starts, telling you that, oh, it has to be this or it has to be that. When in reality, it's really not what we would think it is. And none of the videos, not one, shows any flight characteristic that is extraordinary at all. Not one. Anyone that would sit down and analyze it frame by frame and look at it would probably come to the same conclusion.
Yeah. Although, but it wasn't just about the videos. It was about the eyewitnesses. It was.
Yeah. And that's where the problem comes on. So anything that has to do with the eyewitnesses is a whole nother area that's very touchy, sensitive subject that I don't feel comfortable doing, because it's basically what I'm trying to do is explain what it is they may have seen to give them at least an answer. But at the same time, it shouldn't be my place to do that. I shouldn't even be really talking about it. Yeah. I'll just put the information out there, and if they accept it, then that's it. If it turns out to be that's what it is, then great. If it's spoofing technology, then that's and they're going to. I'm going to say it's got to be pretty advanced, because David Fravor, just as one example, is apparently a very experienced fighter pilot commander. And that was the whole thing behind it.
He's flying around the country right now, going to UFO events, saying that he saw a UFO. So
and if they could fool him, the whole idea for testing on our the problem is this type of testing should be illegal. It basically, there are laws against the military doing this type of testing, and because it becomes a safety issue. Okay, so that should not have been done kind of the way they did it. So if this is proven to be spoofing technology, and that we actually had physical objects in that airspace that were producing these signals, then guess what? You've got an issue with us breaking our own laws to just test something. There's a problem with that, a big problem with that. So I have a problem with that. I don't think that should be done. And also the sailors have a problem with it, because they say that it can't be that because it would be illegal. Well, how many times has the government done things that's not necessarily legal? But the bigger issue is that the U.S. government has, well, let's just say the military, the U.S. Air Force during the Nimitz event is who was utilizing or being utilized to exhibit the technology against the Navy, so the Navy could test their radar systems against it as well. The easy thing behind it is, think of this: if that was actually a real object and it was actually there, and the commander got wind of it, that this fighter pilot went out to chase this object down and was never able to get it, or another pilot went out after it and got film of it, why wasn't a plane from a different base that had weapons scrambled to do it? If these objects are operating with impunity inside of our airspace, inside of our training, military training airspace, why didn't they take it more seriously? Why didn't they go after these things or continue to follow them? I mean, why didn't Chad Underwood speed up and go catch this thing, get better video? Why did he stay past the range of the APFLIR? These are questions that make you wonder. I'm not questioning the pilot, so to speak, because they have to go by what they're told to do, but Fravor My understanding is when he was coming back, he asked for permission to continue the pursuit.
Yeah.
So, that's a piece of information that's not out there. So if Fravor ever asked, hey, were you asked, did you ask for permission to continue the pursuit? Because Turber says you did. And if he goes, oh yeah, I remember that, then that would say, I heard it on the comms. But there's so many questions that just make you think common sense wise. The captain of the ship didn't seem to care when he was told, no big deal. So was it that he didn't really consider it a concern, or was it that he knew that it was basically a testing operation and that it's not that big of a deal? I mean, what would you do?